For our introductions, if you've joined us past couple of months, you know me and Ryan pretty well at this
Yeah.
point. Ryan, do you want to do your quick introduction for everyone?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Ryan Keller. Been with Pate for nearly 7 years now. Coming up on that pretty quick, and have been doing a lot of different SharePoint kind of work. It's primarily in the branding space, and now as a modern workplace consultant, been doing a lot of work with helping clients set up their modern workplaces essentially, and that a lot of that includes different features like Viva, and that's why we kind of wanted to put on this webinar and the other webinars to make sure that everyone's aware of all these latest and greatest features.
Yeah, and latest and greatest for sure. They keep rolling out new things
Yes.
all the time. I have a new one I was just learning about, so I will share that in a little bit here. Yeah, Ryan he makes everything beautiful, knows SharePoint inside and out and Microsoft 365 technologies, and also is our go-to person for branding and design. So happy to have you on here talking today. He'll be talking a little bit later about Viva Learning.
Yes.
I'm Kat Weixel. I'm a modern workplace consultant at Pait, and I've been with Pait just 2 years now, but really working with SharePoint and Microsoft 365 technologies for a very, very long time. I was an intranet manager in my former life and spent 16 years doing that role. So I know all about the pain getting your users familiar with these various technologies and how to make the most of this stuff. We love talking about Microsoft 365, and today are very excited to talk more about Viva.
Absolutely.
So just a very quick recap. This is the third and final session. We've done two webinars already in January and February. So the first one, we really talked about what's included in Microsoft Viva overall and the features in the suite, the licensing costs. Ryan did a great job kind of pulling that information together and touching on those pieces. And then if you have not seen this, you need to go watch it. He did this amazing job going all through Viva Connections, what it is, how it works, and then walked step by step from start to finish of how you set it up. So it's a fantastic recording. Please go watch that if you haven't seen it already. And then I tried to follow up on that. I did the Viva Engage session, and that was really right on the edge of some big late breaking announcements. So it was kind of a cutting edge webinar that day. We shared the news about the new Yammer rebranding. So Yammer is going to be Viva Engage. Sometime this year, everything's going to be rebranded
We
to
made that
Viva Engage.
announcement the day
Hmm.
before the webinar.
Yep,
So
the
that was
day
a kind
before.
of a
So I was
scramble.
scrambling. I was scrambling to prep for that and read all the updates. So we want to bring you the latest and greatest if we can. And for both of those recordings, they are on our YouTube channel. So if you go to YouTube, just look up Pate Group, or here's the direct link for you as well. So I'm going to jump right in. I want to talk about Viva Insights so we can get to talk about Viva Learning. We want to make sure we have time to go over all this goodness for you today. And as I've mentioned in past webinars, we are trying to mostly focus on what is included with the Microsoft 365 license. We know that there are all kinds of great bells and whistles that come with the premium licenses. However, not everyone can afford those. And so we like to just tell you what you can get with that license you already have, but we will make note when something is an additional feature at an additional cost. So when you go into Microsoft Teams, whether you're in the desktop application or the browser, you can see something that looks like this when you go to Viva Insights. And that's just one of the many apps that's made available to you inside of Microsoft Teams. Right now, it looks like this. Now, the reason I'm putting this in what it looks like today is because I was just reading, of
The
course,
latest and greatest.
the latest and greatest. I was just reading that probably rolling out, maybe some of you are starting to see this now because it said between early March to early April. I tend to always be on the late side of those things when they give a range like that. But that this is going to be rolling out worldwide by supposedly early April, everyone should start seeing this new look in the Viva Insights app. And really what I was reading just kind of reassured that while the labels are different than what we're even going to be talking about today, it should be more intuitive what you find under what label. So now it's going to be this basic menu on the left as opposed to across the top. And it's going to be home, well-being, productivity, and teamwork. So late breaking news, you heard it here possibly first. This is going to be changing in the near future. And so you will start seeing a new a new look and feel. Unfortunately, I don't have this yet. So what I'm going to be showing you today is what it still looks like. But I wanted to make sure you were aware that something new is coming out. So when you go in to Viva Insights, and by the way, you can actually get to Viva Insight. You don't have to be in Teams to get there. There is just a URL for Viva Insights, and we'll look at that when we get to the demo. But most of the time when I'm going into Viva Insights, I'm interacting through the Teams app. And right off the bat, they have these different menu options. So one of the things that you can do inside of Viva Insights is connect with people you're collaborating with. It's using that Microsoft Graph and intelligence to find out from who you're chatting with, who you're meeting with, who you're emailing, figuring out who you're meeting with, frankly, who your main collaborators are, both internal and external. And then it uses this area of insights to provide connection, whether it shows some recent messaging maybe with the person that you were talking to. Maybe you said, I'll get back to you on that, or I'll send you this by Friday. And you put that in an email or a chat, it's going to potentially find that and then serve that up to you and check in and say, hey, did you do this? Do you want to check that off and say that that's complete? So that's one of the things that Viva Insights does. And it can do it inside the Viva Insights app. You were also potentially seeing that in daily briefing emails. That's usually where I was interacting with those. Those are paused right now, and apparently it's because Microsoft is revamping them and making them better. They stopped sending those sometime mid-January, and I'm hoping they're close because I actually love those. I use those all the time, and I'll show a screenshot of it in a second, but it was essentially an email that summarized the latest things that you either had marked as tasks in To Do or Outlook, as well as those conversation snippets that it thought might be tasks, and it would check in with you to see if you had completed them. It also kind of helped prompt you to plan focus time and things like that. So those are not gone forever, but they are paused while they're being revamped. So let's hope those come back sometime soon. The other thing that you can see on this Stay Connected page right now is this prompt to send praise to your colleagues. Now, I love the praise feature. I just think it's a really nice, simple way to, instead of saying thanks to someone for something they did, maybe take it a step further. Maybe acknowledge it publicly so that your whole team can see what this person did, how this person impacted your day. Maybe this person just completed a difficult certification, whatever it is that you think they deserve praise for, you can share that. You can share it one-on-one through chat, and that's still nice. And it's probably a little cooler and better than sending just a chat message. But I think where it has the most power is when you do it and you post it for the entire team. And what I like in Viva Insights is you can actually set it up to remind you so that you're not forgetting to send praise. Sometimes it's easy in our daily lives to just get very busy and you think, oh, this person's awesome, this person did this great thing, but you don't necessarily express it. You can actually schedule maybe twice a week for Viva Insights to remind you, is there someone you want to send praise to? And then that might jog your memory of something somebody did that you can then go and easily submit praise. And Viva Insights also is a great place to just track things. So you can see history in Viva Insights of the praise that you've sent and the praise that you've received. The other big thing that you get in Viva Insights that's probably going to be wrapped into this new well-being, I would imagine the new well-being section, is a way to protect your time. So you can do things like book focus time. You can set quiet time that affects your mobile device. So it goes across Outlook and Teams apps on your mobile device and can quiet those during set periods of time, like evenings, weekends, things like that. You can get some productivity suggestions in line when you're typing chats or emails. And then there's also a way to schedule lunch hours. So you can just, instead of having to go into your calendar and block time to focus on things or block time for your lunch, you can get Viva Insights to help you with that. There are additional things, and I think they may come with the premium license. I couldn't get clear information on that, but I didn't see them in my demo tenant. So I think they come with the more advanced license for Viva Insights. But you can do things like schedule breaks and learning time and time to check up on your email. I'll tell you a personal experience. I actually used those and focus time. I scheduled all of those just to try them out. I removed all of them except for focus time. Focus time is by far the most helpful, I think, and my favorite thing to just have Viva Insights book for me because it looks at your calendar, it sees when you're available, and then it will go on your preferences. If you prefer focusing in the morning or maybe the afternoon, you can schedule all that in the app, and then it will go out for 2 weeks at a time. Block your calendar with focus time every day if that's what you say you want it to do. I find that very helpful. I found the breaks and the learning time, the 15-minute breaks once or twice a day, and then the checking email. I found them a nuisance to be on my calendar, so I actually wound up canceling that and removing it. So even if you don't get those with your plan, I wouldn't worry about it. I actually prefer the focus time, and that is something everybody gets. The other cool thing just to mention about focus time is it does by default put you in do not disturb mode in Teams. So it's just a nice feature. You can, turn that off, but it can put that in so that you aren't getting distracted by chats and things like that while you're in your focus mode. And one other thing I want to talk about here before we get into the demo stuff is the virtual commute experience. You probably heard about this when they first announced it. When was that, Ryan? Maybe like 2 years ago or
Something like that.
2.5 years ago. It was during the pandemic, but they were really trying to kind of help, especially with people who were suddenly working from home all the time, to have a way to transition from work life to home life. And so, since we didn't have a physical commute anymore, almost all of us at that point, we had this option. They had a contract with Headspace. And so Headspace has all these great meditation things and focus music and all this cool stuff. So they kind of pulled this all into Viva Insights. Then you could start doing a virtual commute and even saying when you wanted to start your commute every day. So you get like a little reminder, and I'll show you through these screenshots what that virtual commute looks like. But basically, you can set it up to remind you or not. I actually turned that off. I used to have it remind me, and maybe it's just my work style, but like I work until I until I absolutely have to stop, and then I go and do whatever I have to do. So I would get annoyed if it was like, "You ready to wrap up?" I'm like, "No, I'm not ready. I'm still busy." So that may just be me. Maybe I'm like the perfect candidate for virtual commute. I'm just not adopting it. But that, if you don't want a reminder and you get to that point where you're like, okay, I'm done, but I do want that transition, you can also just go start the virtual commute. You don't have to have it timed. What it does, and I'll just walk through this, we don't have to read the slides. So it starts like this. Whenever you start the virtual commute, it says begin the commute. And then it first prompts you with what your schedule is tomorrow, which is always nice if you're ending one day, but you want to make sure you feel ready for the next. It's good to know, like, what are your meetings tomorrow? What's your schedule for tomorrow? So it just kind of reviews that. If you haven't accepted any appointments, it gives you an opportunity to quickly accept any pending appointments. Then it reminds you of the tasks that you had today, and it gives you an opportunity to add some new tasks for tomorrow. So maybe you get to that point where you have to shut down, You have to start moving into your home life, your outside activities. But there are things you didn't get done today that you really have to look at first thing in the morning. This is just a nice way to type in those tasks and set reminders maybe for tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. when you're getting back online so that you don't forget to do those things. And then you can truly have that peace of mind and step away knowing that you're not forgetting anything. And then finally, the closing piece, and this is maybe why I used to struggle with the virtual commute. I tend to be the type of person that's like, okay, I just ran through, I finished all this stuff, I gotta go. I do not have 10 minutes for Zen. And it's probably a really bad thing. I probably really should take 10 minutes for some Zen. But what I like is they have these different options. So you can wind down even if you only have a minute, you can just do a breather break and you can reset by doing this. And what I like about the breather break option is it just kind of has this. I think that in this one, it's like the sun and it grows and to like breathe in and then it shrinks back down. And that's when you're supposed to breathe out. And you can just focus on that good, calm breathing for 1 minute and then you're done. And that may be just enough of what you need to disconnect from work and then shift into the rest of your day. There are these other pieces here. So if you do have more time, the ending your day one does have more of a nice ending meditation. There is a body scan that's only 3 minutes. It's another meditation thing. And then the reflection is a nice thing. You can reflect on your day. And this tracks over time. And I'll show you this in the demo. But you basically can you don't even have to think, you don't have to write down words. You can just say, happy, nah, or wow, today was a really bad day with a simple emoticon. You just click on it, you have that reflection, and then it starts tracking that history. So maybe you can see over time, wow, this was a bad month or this was a great month, and you can see that reflection history. So some of those things are nice to just take a moment to do. There are some other elements that you can do within Viva Insights. It can help you. If you haven't done this already in Outlook, you can set things up to default to shorter meetings. So whenever you create a new meeting, you can have it end 5 minutes early if it's typically a half-hour meeting, or 10 minutes early if it's an hour or longer. So there are different options there. You can obviously change these settings as well. You can automatically make all your meetings Teams meetings. So these are just some tools that you can explore and see which things might be helpful for you. But it really makes it nice. I have really appreciated doing the shorter meetings by default, because then you still have that padding if you need to run over, need to run a little long, but you also have a nice little break, bio break or something between your meetings. So it's nice for everybody. And then there is an effective meetings tracker, so you can actually look at your habits. Do you get distracted while you're in meetings? Are you multitasking? Are you properly, scheduling meetings with enough time for people? Are you doing them at the last minute? Are you doing them during work hours? Or maybe you trying to meet with people before or after their work hours? All kinds of tracking is happening here, and you can look even in the meeting habits and see details. And then here's just a screenshot of those emails that exist. One still comes, one is on hold. So the daily briefings email is the second one here on the right-hand side. This is the one that I used to find helpful because it would actually remind you about tasks or things that you said to people that you were going to do. And then it also gave you those opportunities to do those things like schedule your focus time, or like I mentioned, the breaks, the learning time, the catch up on messages. You could book all that from the email. The digest email still comes, and that's more of an overview of your habits. So it's kind of nice. It tells you, how good you are at keeping to your quiet hours without letting people interrupt you, or rescheduling them, or maybe deleting the focus time. Different things, different trends and work habits that are personal to you are in here. Now, you might be looking at all of this stuff and saying, like, it's really seeing quite a bit of information about me, and I'm a little nervous about this. Privacy is, very much important to Microsoft. You have information available to you on how the information is collected and being used. Really, what you see is just for you. What your managers can see, if they have the right licenses, if they, kind of purchase the premium licenses and get the workplace overview or the teamwork overview, they can see insights across the board, but they can't drill down and see what specific things you're doing. So you're the only person who can see the insights that we just looked at. You do have the ability to turn this off so that you really can, make sure none of this is being tracked. Just know that you're then going to lose all the features we just talked about. So if you have concerns about the privacy settings, there is plenty of information within the application about that. And you can also read more on Microsoft's site. And then I was really showing what is included in that license, but if you want to go with a premium license, so either the Viva Insights license, which I believe it's $4 a month per user, and then the Viva suite, the whole suite that includes all of these different applications. I think that one's still currently at nine.
It is
It's
still,
a discounted $9 a
right up
month.
until July 1st is when that switches over.
July 1st. Okay. Thank you. Yeah. So that's when you get into the, pay to play, the additional licensing costs. And that comes with premium personal insights. So like there are additional things about meetings, email open rates, apparently. And I pulled this is direct Microsoft wording on what's included with the additional licenses. The extra plans for healthy collaboration. I haven't even gotten into some of these features, so I'm not sure what all is included to make it extra special. But manager insights and leader insights are kind of a key thing. And the reason a lot of organizations are paying for those licenses because they want to see the information about how their teams are doing or how the overall company is doing. And there are just a lot of additional analytics, which we've seen with the other Viva applications as well. Once you get that premium license, there are a lot more analytics tools available to you. So keep in mind, if you use Viva Insights and then you start saying, this is great, but I want to see what else can be done, that's when you can really dive in and see what else comes with those premium licenses and explore those. So let's skip over. Do we have any questions posted before I just jump in and demo a little bit of this?
Does not look like it.
Okay. So basically, this is Diego's Teams environment. This is Teams on the web. One thing I will note, this is available. Viva Insights is not just available in Teams desktop app and Teams web app. It is available in the browser directly. So if you go to insights.viva.office.com, or if you don't want to remember that, go to the app launcher. And it is one of the many apps in Microsoft 365 app launcher. And that's going to take you to that browser, that URL. Those are the ways you can get to it if you're sitting at a desk. If you are on the go, that Teams mobile app is so wonderful. I actually did this last night. I was sitting on the couch after making dinner, but I wanted to kind of mentally prepare. I hadn't done a virtual commute. I wanted to prepare a little bit more for this webinar and then really kind of get ready for bed and wind down. I used the mobile app to go to Viva Insights and actually did my virtual commute from the web app. So you don't have to be sitting, like if you did have to run out the door, but you still don't feel like you fully disconnected or you haven't written down all those tasks you needed to write down, you can do that right from your mobile app. So it's very cool. So all of these features are available from any of these locations for Viva Insights. You can come in and see that activities thing. So we talked about the reflection. This is, Diego's reflection today. He's pretty meh today. And you can see the reflection history over time. He was much happier the last time he checked in. So this has gone down. Now, this is a demo tenant. Diego doesn't get in here every day doing stuff. So this will be a lot richer with people who are using this on a daily basis. You'll see a good reflection history over a period of time. Some of those other pieces that we were talking about, you see right from that main page. You can jump right in and do the praise, the virtual commute, all of that. If you go to stay connected, and of course, my demo tenant is being weird with praise right now. There we go. Quick refresh sometimes does the trick. The praise from here is a little different than what you might be used to if you're just in Teams and you're sending praise to, you're going into a channel and starting a praise from there. When you do it from Viva Insights, let's say you got reminded to, think about who you might want to praise. And so you go in to do that. Once you put someone in here, you have options. Do you want to do it as a chat? And that's actually the default. So this is just going to send them a praise through chat. So it's one-on-one. Or if you say Teams channel, then basically this is picking the teams and the channels that you both have access to. And you would determine what are you praising this person for? What team makes the most sense? And then you can pick the team and then pick the channel to post the praise in. And you still have the same badges that you're used to. And you can, pick your background colors, you can preview it, see what it's going to look like, and then send it. And so you can do that right from Viva Insights. You don't have to go into that team, that channel. And then when you do that, or when you go to the history, you can see all the praises that you've sent. You can look at praises that you've received, your praise history, etc. So you can look at the show praise history and, look at what's been received and sent. So it's a nice place to kind of connect with that across the board. This is also where that collaboration element, I'm hoping this actually gets a lot better. I mean, it doesn't look good in the demo tenant because there's not a lot of activity, but even in my own environment, it's not showing the robust information it used to. I'm wondering if that's because of the revamping they're doing on the daily briefing, because a lot of that information was very similar, like who your top collaborators are and things like that. So I'm hoping when they improve that this will kind of go back to being a more interesting and helpful page. But who knows? Maybe with the whole revamped app that they just announced, who knows what that'll look like. We'll find out soon enough. This is where that protect time stuff is. So like if you want to set up a focus plan, you can come in here. You can show, this is for booking individual focus time, but you can also do a whole focus plan preference. And notice this takes you into a menu of settings. So this is going to let you configure your recurring plan for focus. How much do you want to focus every day? 2 hours is a nice typical option. I use that. You can say if you prefer to book it in the morning or the afternoon, depending on when it's available, when you don't want to schedule earlier then. And then this is that part where if you want to silence Teams, put you in do not disturb mode, you can mute those notifications during your focus time if you want to. That's the default. So that's settings for protect time. Notice though, when you're in here, you can see all these other settings as well. So you can do, your configuration of what's your work week so that Teams knows, when your days start and end. And that's kind of how it determines then, okay, outside of work time for you is based on this. And, it can put those analytics together according to that. If you want the virtual commute to remind you, you can do that, have it send you a reminder or not. If you do the reminder, it tells you what time it's going to notify you. And so on and so forth. This is, where you can configure your lunch hours. If you want to be prompted, reminded to do that reflection, that quick little smiley face. If you want to be reminded about praise, you can choose. So I have 3 days a week. Diego gets reminded at 4:00. Is there someone he wants to praise? And he could just ignore it, but at least it kind of does that reminder. the effective meeting settings here, the privacy information. And then here's what I was talking about with the daily briefing, that announcement that that's been paused right now. So hopefully this little banner will go away sometime soon so you can start planning that daily briefing. And this inspiration library finally is just something that's in preview. I actually just played around with it. It has some really, helpful articles that you can go read. So if you're seeing this inspiration library, I don't know how long it's going to be there, but because it is just listed here in preview, but certainly something to check out. There's some really interesting reads in there. And I think that's what, let me just show you really quickly before I turn this to Ryan. So that Viva Insights in the browser, if you come in here, if you wanted to see, because this question does come up periodically, what license do I even have? Like, I don't know what they paid for me. I don't know what my license is. You can come up and click on your profile in Microsoft 365 and then click View Account. And you have a lot of different, account settings here. You can look at your subscriptions from here. So if you click View, you can actually see what you have access to, what subscriptions you have for your account. And so you'll notice Diego here does not have any of the Viva Suite licenses. He's got his he's an E5 license for Office 365. So he has what's included in that, which is a lot. And then he has some other licenses, but he does not have the Viva Suite, which is why he doesn't see some of those advanced options that we mentioned would be there if you were to pay for that additional license. So just wanted to point that out because I know sometimes people are like, I don't know, do I have it? Do I not have it? You can go in and find out pretty easily. But I think that's pretty much it. I really recommend, if you have not gone into Viva Insights, to go in and play around with it, because you may find something really helpful to you. And if you're like me, where you struggle to do anything but work when you're actually sitting at your desk, then take advantage of the mobile app and go into your team's mobile app when you're sitting on the couch and maybe do a little meditation from there. That's what I did last night, and it was actually really nice. So definitely worth looking into. All right, well, let me switch back to the slides and get on to Ryan's topic. Can you see the Viva Learning here
Yes.
now? Right, okay. And just let me know when you want me to switch slides, since I've got the
Cool. Sounds good. So we're going to talk about Viva Learning now. And let's go ahead and switch to the next one. So what is Viva Learning? So first of all, thanks for all the insight into Insights. That was a really helpful to see all that. And for Viva Learning now, let's kind of take a look at what actually is involved here, what it is, what you do with it, how do you set it up and configure it. So Microsoft's definition of Viva Learning it's actually pretty good. They call it a centralized learning hub in Microsoft Teams that lets you seamlessly integrate learning and building skills into your day. And that's really exactly what it is. Just like Viva Connections, when we looked at that, just like how Viva Connections brings in the internet into Teams, Learning is a Teams app that basically brings together learning and knowledge also right within Teams. So unlike Insights, it does not have a standalone web presence, so it's all done right within Teams. So essentially, in other words, it's basically just an app within the Teams app that acts as kind of a learning hub. It's not a learning management system, so it's not going to track courses and track your progress through all that. It's basically just a centralized place that you can have a lot of learning content, whether that's from some of the free stuff that we'll take a look at, or from a third-party provider that your organization or you personally have a subscription to. It can also, and this is what we're going to spend a lot of time looking at, bring in content from SharePoint right into Viva Learning to be consumed. So if your organization has like onboarding stuff, if you have different presentations that you want people to be able to see and watch as part of their day-to-day learning activities, we can bring those in. So it's not just limited to what Microsoft gives us or what your third-party training provider has available. You can also set up your own content. So let's go ahead and take a look at what that looks like. So real quick, this is the Viva Learning home. This is right within Teams here. Basically, it acts as a dashboard. It's got your featured banner right up at the top, and you can actually configure what shows there. Has some actions for you. Maybe you want to haven't taken a course in Viva Learning yet. It prompts you to take your first course. It will let you pin the app if it's not already pinned on the sidebar there, which we also will take a look at to see how that process works. And then it's kind of hard to see in the screenshot, but at the very bottom there, that's where all of your content providers start to show up. You'll notice that it does not start with our SharePoint content, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But
That could be a whole other
that could be a
webinar
whole other webinar.
slash
But
gripe session.
but let's take a look at what's going on here. The next slide. So we talked a little bit already about the cost of the Viva suites. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this slide, but just like Insights, this is one of those ones that comes in two flavors. We got the free version and the paid version. So the free version includes content from basically Microsoft properties. It has LinkedIn Learning, Microsoft Learn, Microsoft 365 training, which actually has a lot of good stuff in it, a lot of interesting topics, courses, sessions that you can just watch for free. Learn how to, build your SharePoint skills or your Windows skills or something completely unrelated to your job function, like character design. There's courses on just designing cartoon characters even. It's kind of interesting stuff that they've got there. And that's all included in the free license. Part of that free license also lets you bring in your SharePoint content into Viva Learning. The paid version, you can see here, includes a lot of other third-party providers. So the whole list there: Edcast, Go on Open Sesame, Skillsoft, Udacity, Udemy, etc. Lots of different providers can be configured to bring that content right into Viva Learning for yourself or your users. You will still need to have a subscription to the content on those third-party sites, plus the Viva Learning premium license. So you do want to make sure that you're paying for both if you're planning on pulling some of that third-party content in.
And really quickly on that, I think with LinkedIn Learning, I want to say it's similar too, because LinkedIn Learning has a lot of free content, but then they have a lot more.
There is premium,
so much,
paid content on LinkedIn Learning. So you may see stuff pulling in from LinkedIn Learning that has a little lock icon on it or a key icon. That does mean that it is part of the premium subscription for LinkedIn Learning. So generally it pulls in mostly the free stuff, but I have noticed a handful of premium courses as part of that LinkedIn subscription too. Apparently the details were a little fuzzy on this bullet point about the links. So you can add links as part of your content to maybe another system or another site or something. That apparently can be added in the free version, but it doesn't show up in your normal view of your content from your provider. That apparently is limited to the paid version. There's a little fuzzy on the details on that one with the paid versus free. And let's see here, the other benefits you get with the paid version is being able to create learning paths and recommend content. So if you're looking to have somebody really spend a lot of time curating your organization's content, if you have a ton of stuff, maybe you want somebody to curate an onboarding learning path and bring in content from HR and IT all in one location. That is one benefit of using the premium license. But you can get a lot done with the free version here. So, unless you really have a strong desire to have your third-party content pulled into Viva Learning, you're probably going to be okay with just the free version, unless you're already paying for the full suite. And like we talked about earlier, the suite is currently $9 per user per month, or you can buy the $4 per user per month individual app. And like we said earlier, that cost is good up until July 1st, when the suite looks like it'll go up to $12 per user per month.
Awesome.
Right. So how do you get it? It is already there, probably. I had a very, very old demo tenant that I was trying to set this up on initially, and Viva Learning just was not there. I couldn't get it to show up. I even opened a ticket with Microsoft support, and they basically said, yeah, whatever version of this demo tenant you signed up for is just a trial version, and the trial version doesn't include anything. So I ended up having to set up a whole other demo tenant, and that's a much newer demo tenant, and it's not a trial, it's a full actual E5 demo tenant. So that was there, that was good. But generally speaking, unless you have some crazy licensing with Microsoft, you probably already have Viva Learning. Otherwise, if that's the free version at least, and otherwise you can go to their pricing page to get that process started of purchasing the full suite or the Viva Learning app. And then you manage your content within Microsoft 365 Admin Center and set up your SharePoint sites to contain all of your learning content. And then you also have Teams users who can find the Viva Learning app themselves if you have not pinned it, or if your admin hasn't pinned that. You should be able to find the Viva Learning app within Teams all by yourself. It's just there and available and ready to use however you would like to use that. Admins can restrict Viva Learning if you decide, I don't like any of this stuff. I don't want to confuse my users. You can actually turn Viva Learning off, or you can disable content providers as necessary. So if you just decide, none of this LinkedIn stuff is any good, I'm just going to turn that off, you can do that as well. But that's basically the kind of the overall gist of how you get it. It's just there, you have it. And what kind of permissions do you need? Well, global admins can generally do anything. And so you either need to be a global admin to set up and configure Viva Learning within the Microsoft 365 Admin Center. There is also a role that can be assigned to a user or other users who might be able to manage this if your 365 admins just aren't interested in this or don't have time. You can assign them the knowledge admin role, and that lets them perform the same tasks of configuring Viva Learning within the admin center without giving them access to everything else. So that is another option there. Other considerations, if you're using SharePoint as a content source, if you're just using the free version of Learning and you don't need to set up SharePoint as a content source, then that's really all there is to it. It's just there. You can either turn it on or turn it off and configure your content providers, and then everyone's happy. If you are using SharePoint as a content source, then you do need that content does need to be shared with the Microsoft 365 group. And that's one issue that we had and ran into with a lot of the documentation, is that it's scattered. That's kind of its own article. It's not mentioned really prominently in the some of the other setup guides. So we do need to be, you will need to be a member of that group. If you're just a general user, you will need to be a member of that 365 group that has the content shared with it to be able to see that content. And if you are the owner of that group and still want to see that, you want to be a member as well. So there's all kinds of goofy permissions
Clear
and everything
as
needed.
mud.
Clear as mud. And then furthermore, you will also need appropriate permissions on the SharePoint site containing that content if you are one of the users who will be managing that content.
Yeah.
So a lot of different permissions considerations here. So if you're just using standard Viva Learning with no other configurations, then it's easy. If you want to get into SharePoint as a content source, then we're going to muddy the water a bit.
Very muddy.
So as we get started to set this particular bit up, I want to throw out a couple of disclaimers here. It is, like I've kind of been hinting at, it is not a straightforward process. There is a lot of bouncing back and forth between the various admin centers and various sites and libraries and lists and apps and a lot of different places that we have to go to actually configure Viva Learning to pull in SharePoint content. It's not just a click done kind of setup, but we're hopefully going to show this setup in a streamlined way, and we'll see what happens, right? So let's see what's next.
Yes, I love this one.
This one here. So Viva Insights is really slow to set up.
Viva Learning.
Viva Insights is fine. Viva Learning is extremely slow to set up. It takes basically 24 hours for anything to happen anytime you make a change, which makes the setup extremely painful to see if you actually did it right, or if something that you changed actually reflects the way that you want it to. So you have to wait 24 hours to see if your updated metadata will pull in, or if your content will even show up. And sometimes it may even take up to 48 hours before that. So it's really, really slow to set Viva why do I keep saying the wrong thing? Viva Learning, to set Viva Learning
We've talked about too many Vivas.
All the Vivas. So Viva Learning is very slow to set up. So once you get everything set up, you just need to wait. and
Yeah.
wait and check it the next day and see if it's ready. So just you can't expect immediate results on that, unfortunately. But here is the basic process. And there's a lot of process steps to go through. And it doesn't necessarily have to be set up in this exact way. This is just kind of the way that as I was working through the whole process, kind of seemed to make the most sense logically. Some of these steps are optional. Some of these steps can be done in different orders, but this is kind of the basic gist of it and what ultimately needs to happen. So starting with the red box, we'll just kind of follow the path that connects those boxes there. We're going to start in the admin center, create our Microsoft 365 groups as needed. If you have groups already that you're planning to use to share your Viva Learning content with, then we don't necessarily need to do this step. Then we need to make sure that we have a SharePoint site. So if you don't have a site that's going to be containing all your learning content, then you would head into your admin center, your SharePoint admin center, to create that site. Only communication sites will work. So if you're planning on using a team site, you might want to rethink that and use a communication site instead. So that would be the next step, would be to go into your SharePoint admin center and create a new site, unless you already have one. Then that would be an optional step. Then we need to open up that SharePoint site and kind of start configuring it to contain all of our Viva Learning content. So we would need to use a document library. Any document library will work. So you can use the one that comes with it. You can make your own learning library if you wanted. And then we would add metadata to that library. We will create folders. Yes, folders to contain all of your Viva Learning content. No matter how many times we tell people, no, avoid folders, just use metadata. No, we have to have folders. It will not work without folders. So your content that you want to surface within Viva Learning has to be in folders within your document library. Then we will upload our content, and then we will actually secure that content or secure those folders with the 365 group that we're planning to utilize as part of that Viva Learning experience. So if you have multiple topics and you're wanting to surface that to different groups, you would secure each of those folders with different 365 groups. But that's the key there, is that it has to be secured with a 365 group. Otherwise, it's just going to ignore it.
Yeah.
SharePoint permissions just,
SharePoint groups
yep, they're
are
not,
not.
it's not gonna work. Now you will need to be a part of a SharePoint group to get to that site if you need to manage that content, but for general users, they will need to be a part of that 365 group to be able to consume that content. Next up, step 4, I can count. We we'll go to the admin center, back to the admin center. So see, we have a lot of jumping around going on here. Back to the admin center, and this is where we'll actually provide that site's URL as a source within Viva Learning. So that's where we actually configure Viva Learning. Some of the documentation had a note in it that said if you create a new site to contain all your learning stuff, it suggests waiting an hour before giving it that URL. So if you make a site,
More
wait an
waiting.
hour, and exactly. See, nothing about Viva Learning is quick. Wait an hour, and that's partly why I have the step 3 there as doing the SharePoint site, making your metadata, uploading your content, creating your folders, basically just to kind of eat up some of that hour if it's a brand new site. If it's an existing site that's been around forever, feel free to do step 4 anytime in the process, really. But step 4 is where we actually tell Viva Learning, use this site and this content to pull that in. Then we'll switch back to the SharePoint site again. And when we provide the URL for our learning site, what Viva Learning does is create a list on our site called the Learning App Content Repository. And that is essentially a list that we will give links to the folder containing our content. It's a
Clear
lot of
as mud.
layers. It's a lot of layers. And that list is actually what Viva Learning will pull in. So we can have all of our content living really anywhere. It's just that list needs to have links to all of the folders that contain our content before it's going to start surfacing in Viva. Then at this point, we can actually start turning on the Viva app for users if we want. Maybe you've tried it out in your own environment. You made sure that everything seems to be working, after 24 or 48 hours or more. And then you're ready to roll this out. Then you can actually go into the Teams admin center and pin that Viva Learning to the sidebar if you want. It's optional. Users can find the Viva Learning app if they want. But if you're wanting to make this a big learning push in your organization, you can pin that app to the Teams sidebar for everybody.
Mhm.
And finally, in Viva Learning itself, the app itself, you can manage as an admin, you can manage that featured content that shows in the banner. You can manage the display name. It'll default to your tenant name. So for us, it would be Pait Group. And that content for us would be under Pait Group. If it's Microsoft, it would be under Microsoft. You can change that. If you want to change that to our company's learning stuff, you can change that there. Again, 24 hours for that change to take place. Really. And you can also check the content sync status in that admin tab as well. So we'll take a look at each of these steps really quickly. I think we're getting low on time. So these are more detailed versions of the steps that we just looked at. But essentially, step one, in the admin center, we're going to create groups or multiple groups if you need to. If you need to see that content, you will also want to be a member of the group as well, not just an owner. It's up to you during this process if you want to create a team and an underpinned SharePoint site to go along with that. You won't use those as part of the Viva experience, but if you have a team or you're going to use this team elsewhere, it's up to you whether you want to actually make a team with that group as well. Then in the SharePoint Admin Center, like we said, you'll want to create that site if you need it. Again, only communication sites can be used for this. So don't make team sites and start putting Viva Learning content in there because it won't find it. All right, next is the SharePoint Learning site. So this is kind of an important one if you're going to set up your content to have custom descriptions and titles and images, just like the rest of Viva Learning does. You do have to create folders within your library, and that's you can break out your content between the various folders, but you do have to put those contents in folders within the libraries. Won't if you just dump it in a library, it's not going to work. It has to be in folders. And then in that document library, you can set metadata columns in the library to add more information to your Viva content. And these do need to be set up exactly as listed here. So you can't put spaces, you can't change the names of those columns or change the type. They do need to be set up exactly as they're listed there to be able to be surfaced in Viva Learning. Otherwise, it's just going to ignore it.
Yeah.
So one of those is a metadata column. So
Okay.
if you don't have that set up, you may need to configure your manage metadata service to actually create a term set for your learning. So that is one additional step that may be required. So again, lots of layers to get this going here. Step 4, again, back in the admin center, this is where we actually put that URL into play. We give it the URL of our SharePoint site, and that is what eventually will create that learning repository, learning app content repository list. And that is like the one thing in Viva that does not take forever. Viva Learning. That is actually very quick to do that. So you absolutely can do that really fast and then start populating that list right away. And you can just switch back to your SharePoint site, and that's when you'll open up that list and start adding links to your folders. This is a part that's we're not quite sure if their documentation is wrong or if they've made an update or something, but they tell us to use the copy link feature to create a link to that folder and
Right.
paste that into the learning app content repository. We're not sure if that's the correct way or not.
Yeah.
We have some experience with that.
Yeah, I'm
It's
almost thinking it would be good for us to, like, when we get more of
Mhm,
that figured out, do like a video
exactly.
walkthrough to share to our YouTube. So definitely
Mhm,
make note of our YouTube channel, because I think that that's something we have a real burning desire to figure out and put to rest once
exactly.
and for all. There are
Exactly.
just so many questions with this process. Yeah.
And finally, this is where in the Teams admin center we will make that app pinned on our sidebar. So that's kind of where we ended up here. All right, so here is the Viva Learning admin tab. This is what you can see as far as your content providers. These are the free ones here: Learn, Training, 365 Training, LinkedIn Learning, and our SharePoint. You can see that the content on that one is set to a very weird date for the syncing. And that basically means it hasn't quite done it yet. Despite the fact that it says success, it doesn't actually appear like it's done anything. That's what the admin tab gives you right there, is that sync status. Let's see, what else do we have?
And there's just so many places to check stuff.
There
It's
are. It's a lot of stuff.
crazy.
Also on the admin tab, it's not shown in
Yeah.
the screenshot, but you do get that creating a feature set, and that's that rotating banner in Viva Learning on the top of the app. You can actually create a feature set, so it's basically up to 6 courses that you want to feature in that banner, and that's where you can do that in the free version as well. All right, really quick, let me pull up my site here, and I'll just kind of basically run through these steps really fast. This is not going to be a demo of actually setting it up. It's more going to be a demo of here's what I clicked on before to do this, because the Viva Learning setup is so honestly finicky that we want to, let's see here, where is it? Screen, this one here. I didn't want to actually break anything before the webinar, so I didn't undo a lot of the Viva. So unfortunately, I like to do demos that actually show in real time setting things up. Unfortunately, I apologize for this. This is going to be one of those, here's what I did, here's what it will look like once you get it all set up. So this is my learning site. I've created my learning site, but let's kind of start at the beginning, and we will go to our Microsoft 365 Admin Center. And of course, it's making me sign in again, because why wouldn't it? Get my 2-factor going here. Yes, approve. Do I? Yeah, sure. Yes. Stay signed in, please. All right. So in your 365 Admin Center, under Teams and Groups and Active Teams and Groups, this is where we would actually start that group creation process. So I would click on Add a Group here and select a 365 group, and I can give it a name, Test Demo Group, and a description if I want. And this is where I can assign owners. I'm going to, yeah, I guess just do myself as an owner here. Next, this is where I can add some members. So I can start with a select group here. I'll just add everybody for now. It's a small list, and click on next. Demo Viva. Give it that email address. And this is what I'm actually going to type in when I assign that group to those folders. This Demo Viva at my tenant name on Microsoft.com. And I can create a team for this group or not. If I uncheck that and click next, here's my settings, and I'm going to create the group. All right, so that is done. That's really all there is to creating a group. I can see under my active teams and groups, here is my Viva Learning group that I created initially. This is the group that I'm actually using right now in my setup. And then here is my test demo group that I actually just made. I can see the different settings on that. So if I close out of that, then the next thing I need to do is jump into my SharePoint site if I don't have a site created. Again, that's already done here, but if I go into, oops, if I go back in, no, it's right here, SharePoint, my admin center, SharePoint admin center. And under sites, active sites here, this is where I would actually go and create my new site. So I can create a new communication site. You want to make sure it's a communication site. Viva demo. I'll make myself the owner on the site here. And that's all I would need to do to create a new site. And it couldn't create the site. Maybe Viva demo 1. No, it's not working, but that's okay. At least I have a site. And that is right here, this Viva Learning group. No, learning right here. Yeah, learning site right here is my site that I'm going to be using for holding all my content. That's a communication site, so I don't have to worry about anything else going on there. And next up would be on the actual SharePoint site itself. So I'm going to switch over to my learning site that I created. And this is just right now, it's just an out of the box site. You can surface your learning content on the site as well. If you want to feature different things about your learning, you can actually use this site as a regular site in your intranet to focus on or feature different learning uh, courses that you might be wanting to show on here as well. So it doesn't have to just be an out of the box boring site. But in this case,
Ryan,
yeah, go ahead.
really, really fast with that. I know we're over on time, and I just put in the chat that anyone who has to go, please check out the recording. We're just going to wrap this
Yes.
up. But we did have a question about the Microsoft. What is it called? The Learning Pathways site. And so I think that that's something that Microsoft used to kind
Hmm.
of push as something to use for this purpose. Now they're pushing Viva Learning. You could kind of use both. If you
You
have
could,
learning
yes.
pathways, use that as your content source potentially. So I just wanted to mention that as you're talking about that
Yes,
site, because
absolutely.
that
Yeah.
came
So
up.
if you have a learning pathways site, you absolutely can use that. That's kind of the idea here is that it's set up to feature a lot of different learning content, and you can do that on your own site as well if you don't have the learning pathways set up as well. So on your learning site, so that's a great question. So on your learning site here, I'm going to go into site contents, and just in my document library here, I've made some folders. And in those folders, I just threw a bunch of random stuff, really. So this is just a document. On here in presentation recordings, I have some videos of our last couple of webinars I threw in here and a PowerPoint. I don't think I mentioned in the slides, and I should have, content that you can use in Viva Learning is videos, audio, documents like Word or PowerPoint, Excel, PDF, really any kind of standard office type document can be pulled in. Your common ones are going to probably be videos and PDFs or Word documents or PowerPoints. I would be guessing would be the most common use cases, but that is what is supported as files that you can pull into Viva Learning. And here are the metadata columns here: content description, thumbnail, web URL, duration that's listed in seconds, and the skill tags is your managed metadata, content author. So these are all of the different metadata columns that you can add in your list to be able to be pulled into Viva Learning. So once you got everything set up and your site is at least an hour old, then we can go back into our Microsoft 365 Admin Center. And I'm going to go to settings, org settings, and scroll all the way down the list here to Viva Learning. And this little panel right here is where Viva Learning is actually configured. Maybe if it loads, there we go. And so this is basically what the options you have as far as configuring Viva Learning goes. Users can upload their own content into Viva Learning in Teams. And this basically just lets you turn that on or off. Our content provider list is very short because this is the free version. If you had the paid version, this list right here under content providers would be much longer. And there are some of those providers have different methods of setting up their content and tying that into Viva. And there actually is some pretty good documentation that we have a link to at the end of the slide that walks you through each of those different providers and how to set those provider content up to pull into Viva Learning. And right down here, this SharePoint option is unchecked by default. So you want to check that and then give it your site's URL here. So in this case, it's my learning site, sites/learning. It does give you a little warning that if you replace that, everyone's going to lose access to it. So you better make sure that your new site that you give it is already configured and has all the content available, and then wait 24 hours. And then you have some privacy options here. And then once you're finished, you would just click the save button at the bottom to save that. And what that does, once you click save, is on your learning site, whatever site you gave that, whatever site's URL you gave to Viva Learning there, it's going to create this learning app content repository list. And so this is basically just a very simple list with a title and a folder URL column. And essentially what it wants here is it wants you to give it some learning content. So this is the actual list that Viva Learning pulls from. So you can have your content technically anywhere as long as it's in a folder, and as long as that folder has been granted access to the 365 group that you're using. Which, by the way, I suppose I should explain that one really quick. Under site contents in my documents here, each of these folders needs to be secured with that 365 group. Now, one thing we have run into, and we're not to spill the beans and spoil the surprise here at the end, but once you go through once we went through all of these setup steps, I still have yet to see any content show up for me in Viva Learning that I've done here. Kat was able to do some kind of sorcery last night and get things to show for her in her tenant. And that's kind of what we've been hinting at this whole time with the weirdness with permissions and groups and these folder links. And we're not sure where the breakdown is between what Microsoft lists in their documentation and what we actually have to do. So we're not
Right.
fully sure yet if it's related to site permissions or the style of links that Microsoft tells us to use versus what we might need to excuse me, what we might need to use. But that's kind of where the breakdown seems to be happening, is somewhere in this area.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, what Microsoft tells us to do is to manage access on each of these folders, so we can secure each folder individually with different permissions if we needed to secure that content for different groups. Under manage access, I would click on the plus grant access button here. And then let's see here. I have this Viva Learning group here that already has access, or my, if I do demo, there's my test demo group that I just made. So I can give this group access here to that site. I can either choose whether I want them to have edit or read access. I accidentally just left that at edit right now, but that's fine for a demo. And unless you want to send people 55 emails that they've been added to a folder, you probably want to uncheck that. And then
Always
grant
uncheck that box.
access. Yes. All right, access granted. You can't, and so that's securing those or granting access to all that content within each of those folders. Then the next piece of this would be that ties into that learning content repository list would be to actually get a link to these folders here.
Yeah.
Microsoft says to do it like this: either select the folder and click copy link.
Yeah. And
Grab that.
when
Go
I
ahead.
did that in my demo tenant, so I looked, the area that I found that was working, I installed an actual Viva tenant and checked, because the content was showing in there. So I checked their settings. The link they provided in their list was the link you get if you click on the folder and then you copy, like, from the URL, it has the site path and then the folder, like the folder name. It doesn't have those sharing, like the little F colon. I forget what those all mean, but
yeah.
I don't know. I have yet to find out if that matters, but I know that things that were working and the way it was set up in the actual Viva tenant, the demo tenant, it was set up that way. So I'm actually going to be doing that link instead of the copy link, even though, like you said, the instructions tell you, they walk you through and say the copy link. So it may not matter, but for as many
That was a
problems as we've
significant
had,
difference. Yeah.
yes.
So
Which is
that's the
why
way.
we should walk through and do a video of
Yep,
this from beginning to end to
we
post
will
when
put
we
together a
Mhm.
cohesive video of this once
Yes.
we get all these weirdness
Yeah.
issues ironed out.
Yeah.
But this is the way Microsoft says to do it, and I have yet for it to work in my demo environment, and I've been hammering away at this for like a week now or more. So it says to copy the link that way. What Kat was saying that seemed to work for her is to actually open the folder here and then copy this entire URL.
Yeah, and I trim
And then you can trim down.
I trim that
Yeah,
end piece,
some of
but
it
yeah.
down a bit, but copy the URL for the folder here and then paste that. So then what it says to do is to take your URL, open up your learning app content repository. It would probably make sense to open the library and the learning app content repository in two different tabs to quickly switch back and forth. Then you would add a new item here, demo stuff, and then provide your folder URL in this field here. Save that, and then wait 24 hours.
Fun. Ryan,
So
would it help for me to show what the content looks
yeah,
like
let's go ahead and switch over to
and then
your
we can just
app. Yeah.
and we'll do the
So this is what it looks like by default without your learning.
yeah, so this is, the demo tenant is Contoso, so it would go with whatever your org name is as the provider. That was one thing I was not clear on, and I kept scrolling down looking for S for SharePoint as a provider, because everything else says, SharePoint is a content source, so I thought it was going to be listed as the provider. That was my first mistake. But yeah, so this
I don't think your screen share's on.
Oh, it's not on?
I think I didn't turn mine off in time.
Oh, let's see. I've been having all kinds of interesting things with this new webinar experience. I am not figuring this one out yet. All right, so you can see my screen, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, this is the Contoso is the provider. And so you see these videos are here. And this is basically coming from the site. If I can open that. So it's coming from our Contoso learning site. Somewhere, here it is. So the videos are actually stored here. The chat with self and the unread only. If you were looking for the so here's the content and then the list. And this is, kind of to what Ryan's saying. I have other stuff in here that's clearly not showing up. And these are some of the other things I was testing, other links to folders that for whatever reason don't show up. So a couple of these are repeats of the same one, just having different links. So as you can see, we've been hammering away at this and trying a lot of different things to figure out what's going to work, what's going to have it show up. I also found that this was showing up for the admin who set all this up. And then Diego here, his account didn't see this morning, but I searched in Viva Learning. So you can come up here and actually search for content. Once I searched for, I think, unread only or something like that, it then found the content and then started showing this in the provider. So this is why I want us to work through start to finish going through, because Microsoft has instructions, then other people have posted instructions on how to do this. There are variations. It's complicated, as you can see, and you have to keep waiting long periods of time to test anything. So I think, our goal is to kind of work through this. As you can see, it is working in here. We have gotten it to work, but we want to get all that definitive, this is exactly how you do it to get it to work, and then we can provide that to you in a video.
Yeah, so we followed Microsoft's guidance, and it didn't work all the way. So that's exactly why we wanted to go through
multiple tenants.
Right, in multiple tenants, not just demo tenants. We tried it out in our actual Pait group tenant, our own company's tenant, and it still didn't work according to their instructions. So it's not just a weird demo tenant problem. It's something is missing in the instructions here, and that's we wanted to walk through what they outlined, but as we were getting closer and closer to the webinar, we realized it's still not working. It's still not working until last night. Kat finally had a breakthrough, but we're not sure why.
So we're going to get that for you.
We're going to get that fixed up, and we'll have a video that walks through all of this process, start to finish. That'll actually work.
So we just want to share a couple slides. We know we're over on time. Luckily, this is being recorded. So those of you who had to drop, I already told you in the chat to check back for the recording goodies. We're going to post this on YouTube tomorrow. And we just wanted to make sure that the recording captures some of these resource slides so that you can see the various things. We talked in the past 3 months about so many things for Viva. So we just wanted to share some resources. Here are some good links for general Viva info, good Viva Connections links. Make sure you watch that video. Ryan did an amazing job walking through that. And that one
That one works.
Microsoft does have good instructions for that. So that one did work well. Viva Engage, all the resources we were sharing on Viva Engage. Viva Insights from today. These are some good things to check out, including the information on the app redesign that's about to roll out. Viva Learning. As you can see, various resources on Viva Learning. And we've answered some questions in the chat. We just want to thank everyone who
Yes.
joined today live for your time and your questions. And then please do, for anyone who's watching this as a recording, we do have all of our webinar recordings available. Usually the day after the webinar, we post them on YouTube. So please check back and keep checking our YouTube channel for the video we're planning to make, which will hopefully be a beginning to end bunch of goodies for you. So yeah, thank you so much.
Right,
Thank you,
thanks so
Ryan,
much.
for walking through all that.
Absolutely. You too. All right. Thanks again, everybody.
All right, thanks. We'll see you next time.